And welcome back. Here's a look at your headlines. An update from the U.S. Capitol now. Initial reports that a police officer was shot there today. Well, it looks like it was just a suspect who was shot, perhaps a bystander as well. There was a news conference about an hour ago. Not a lot of information released. We're told the officer was taken to the hospital, though. The gunman is in surgery. He is in custody. They do say this does not appear to be any kind of terrorist act, a criminal activity. That is all. Meanwhile, Syrian government forces drive Islamic State fighters out of the ancient city of Palmyra. The defeat is a huge setback for ISIS since declaring a caliphate across Syria and Iraq. Russian jets and helicopters helped carry out dozens of airstrikes to help the Syrian troops. This despite declaring a withdrawal from Syria 2 weeks ago.
Oh, look at that. She's trying to carjack the police officer's car. Unbelievable. Slamming her to the ground.
Yeah, that's where the carjacking ended. After leading police on an Easter Sunday high-speed chase near Los Angeles, this woman was put in a stretcher and loaded onto an ambulance after trying to carjack a police car. No injuries were reported in the initial carjacking. Don't know about her injuries after being slammed to the ground. Meanwhile, Donald Trump effigies were burning all across Mexico yesterday. It's part of an annual Easter tradition. These effigies are normally based on unpopular Mexican political figures, but this year Trump got included for his comments on illegal immigrants. They're also meant to represent Judas, the man who betrayed Jesus in the Bible.
Little guy, what do you do?
Yeah, gridlock in Australia caused by what else? A koala. Police had to escort this little mischievous marsupial off the Queensland-Brisbane Valley Highway after wandering out into traffic. An officer did stay with the little guy until he was able to safely get up into a tree. Glad nobody was hurt there either. Donald Trump and Ted Cruz battle over their wives, and it continues to heat up with both candidates trading barbs on the Sunday talk shows.
Late at night, he sends tweets attacking my wife, attacking Heidi. It is inappropriate. It is wrong. It is frankly disgusting to see a candidate attacking the spouse of another.
Well, there are things about Heidi that I don't want to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about them. I mean, you know, you can look.
And it is a sign of just how scared Donald is right now because he doesn't want to discuss the substance.
It's very close to the super PAC, just so you understand. And there's no way in a million years that super PAC did that without his absolute knowledge. Don't forget, I call him Lion Ted.
But you mess with my wife, you mess with my kids, that'll do it every time. Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
That soundbite will go down in history, I think. But this, of course, all heated up last week after Trump threatened to, quote, spill the beans about Cruz's wife, Heidi, in response to that ad about Melania. He also shared an unflattering picture of Heidi, photoshopped next to Melania Trump there. Cruz has denied knowing anything about that ad, which he's calling deplorable. This is where we'll start today's roundtable. And joining us today, Brent Budowski, columnist from The Hill. We're hoping Betsy McCoy can join us here in just a little bit. All right, Brent, you know, we got to kind of talk about it because people are still interested in it. We talked about Trump's foreign policy, which is obviously more important. What do you make of all this? I mean, you can blame the media for their infatuation with this tawdry incident, whatever you want to call it, but people are interested. And I always say we get the government and the media we deserve. What say you, sir?
Well, from everything I know, both Mrs. Trump and Mrs. Cruz are wonderful, decent women. They deserve a heck of a lot better. And like most normal people, I deplore any attacks or criticism of either of them. I think they're both wonderful. As for the media, yes. Rather than go into the arcane issues of national defense or budget policy or where America's going, show them a little sex and they'll do it. Put it in the National Enquirer, and they'll use that as an excuse to put it on the network news and on cable. I think it's an indictment of the media. And I also think it's an indictment of the candidates. I mean, if I were advising either Trump or Cruz, I would say stop it, stop it, stop it. Say that the other one's wife is a wonderful woman and talk about the issues about the country that are the real important things.
Yeah, I agree with you on that last point, Brent, because I think that Ted Cruz actually brought this up himself during the event, which we showed, where he made that sniveling coward remark. I'm not quite sure about that, but I read that someplace. And you can always simply say, look, I'm not going to dignify these rumors with any kind of response. I think that's kind of the PR 101 playbook. But they seem to be using this to their advantage, or at least trying to keep it out there because they feel like it might benefit them somehow.
Oh, yeah, and I will tell you, the audience, I was pitched the Cruz story myself by someone who wanted me to write about it. And
did it have anything to do with the Marco Rubio campaign? Because that rumor's out there, too, that Rubio was going to drop this bombshell as a last-ditch effort to try and catapult himself into that #2 spot.
Actually, I heard from sources in Texas who hate Cruz, who are not associated with the Trump campaign, the Rubio campaign, or the Clinton campaign. But either way, I think it is just a defamation of our democracy and an insult to two good women. They ought to have the brains and self-respect and judgment to just say, that Melania Trump is a good woman. Heidi Cruz is a good woman. There are enough differences between the candidates and the parties on big things when we're under danger from terrorist attacks. We have problems around the world. We have economic anxiety. Let the two good women alone and talk about the things that matter to voters. And shame on the candidates for not doing that. And just as much shame on the major media for being sensational and cheap and using this as an excuse to do what they would rather do, the salacious dirt, than cover the serious issues that Americans care about.
Yeah, foreign policy is so hard. It's so hard, right? This is so easy, so cheap. It's like a fast food, like a Happy Meal kind of thing. Let's talk, though. Charlie Sykes, one of the most popular radio hosts in Wisconsin, had Donald Trump on his talk show host recently. I believe that was today. And Sykes tried to get Donald to apologize for what he had to say about Heidi Cruz. Let's take a listen.
Again, I didn't start it. He started it. If he didn't start it, it would have never happened.
Why?
Nothing like this would have ever happened. But he started it. So,
Yeah.
but
just,
I would
remember, we're not on.
You just said it's fine with
okay,
me.
we're not on a playground. We're running for president of the United States.
I agree with that 100%. And my views are not playground views.
Good for Charlie Sykes. I mean, because was that not a grade school defense, if you ever heard one from Donald Trump? I mean, I know there's a lot of Trump supporters who watch this program, but he started it? Really? Really, Mr. Trump? He started it? What are we, in fifth grade?
Well, Trump was sounding like Richard Nixon in that. Nixon would go, I don't like any attacks on my opponents for being communist pinkos and cheaters. I deplore anybody who calls my opponents these names, then repeat the names and repeat the attacks. Why not just do the decent and honorable and, yes, the manly thing? Heidi Cruz is a good woman. Melania Trump is a good woman. Give them peace, show them respect, and talk about the things that people care about. And I don't think that helps any candidate by attacking the spouse of a political opponent or using the kind of Trump-Nixon style of saying, well, I didn't do this, somebody else did, and then repeat the attack. People aren't stupid. We need serious people in America now to discuss serious issues that affect our country, our security, our safety, our economy, our peace, and our defense against terrorism. Leave the wives alone. Show them respect and have the dignity as candidates to take the wives seriously and respectfully and to take the voters seriously and respectfully.
Yeah, there's one huge issue out there that I think Ted Cruz needs to talk about, and that's Donald Trump's tax returns. This is unprecedented. Presidential candidates always release their tax returns. Even if you're a Donald Trump supporter, you should be pushing for him to release his tax returns, because if there's nothing in there to hide, great. If there is something in there to hide, it could become a problem later on should he get elected president. I don't know, Brent. I think we need to see those tax returns. We need to put them out there on the table.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right. And the Republican National Committee doesn't take much advice from me. But if they were going to tonight, I would require the release of the tax returns before his name being put in nomination for the convention. And I would make all the candidates
watch
follow
Paul
that.
Ryan. Watch Paul Ryan. If he puts that in the rules for the convention, that might be a little caveat they had to get done. All right, Brent, stick around. We got more to talk about. We'll talk about the big weekend for Bernie. Too easy to resist the pun there. We're going to talk about Bernie Sanders and his sweep of Hillary Clinton. Does it really matter? Probably not, but it could. We'll come back with more. All right, guys, so one more update for you about the shooting on the U.S. Capitol today. Police have now identified the man who was arrested as Larry Russell Dawson. He is in surgery right now. Apparently, he had been arrested before. Police had issued a warning for him to stay away from Capitol grounds. Seems to be a little problem with mental stability here in this case. There were reports earlier of a police officer being shot. That does not appear to be the case. The suspect, though, was shot in the altercation with police. He's arrested. He's in surgery. His name is Larry Dawson. And they also say there appears to be no tie to any kind of terrorist act here. This appears to be one guy who should not have been doing what he was doing, a criminal act. All right, let's get on. Let's talk about Bernie Sanders.
Let me begin by thanking the people of Alaska for giving us a resounding victory tonight. We just won the state of Washington. That is what momentum is about.
All right, Bernie Sanders had a big weekend, easily sweeping 3 states, Alaska, Hawaii, and Washington. But will it make any difference in his battle with Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination? Have you seen the delegate counts? He's way behind. Let's go ahead and bring in our roundtable today. Joining us again, Brent Budowski. Unfortunately, Betsy McCoy will not be able to join us. She's having some internet connection issues. But Brent, we were talking earlier today about Bernie Sanders, and I made the claim that this really isn't going to matter. Good weekend for Bernie Sanders. But you told me that you know some Hillary folks in Brooklyn that are not too happy about this weekend, and they're starting to get a little itchy. Does this include any superdelegates who may be rethinking their commitment to Hillary Clinton?
Well, the superdelegates do not want to rethink their commitment to Hillary Clinton. But I can tell you, I used to work for Democratic leaders in Congress, and on a day like this, I'd have 100 Democrats whispering in my ear, what do I do if my constituents vote for Bernie by 60%? And I got to tell them they're wrong if it gets down to the fact where superdelegates might actually matter. They are a nervous group of people right now, the superdelegates. And the Clinton people, Clinton will probably be nominated. The odds are still very substantial on her behalf. But number one, Bernie did very, very well, brilliantly well over the weekends. He's won 5 out of the last 6. He has a very good chance of winning Wisconsin, which is coming up now. And in New York, 2 weeks later, is going to be a real battle. The interesting question of the last weekend about Hillary, I exchanged emails with a Democrat whose name everyone in our audience knows. And I said, what bothers me is in those states, 3 caucus states, with the entire Democratic establishment behind her, she could only get 15, 20, 25% of the vote. To Bernie's 75 to 80. One would think there'd be more enthusiasm and organization, even in those caucus states, and there wasn't. They didn't turn out. They weren't there. Bernie won by gigantic margins. And there is kind of a decadence in some parts of the Democratic establishment that they can't produce even better than that. Those were pathetic numbers that you got, which says more about the establishment that supports her than her. But no, I think there's a tremendous edge to Clinton. There's no question about it. But watch what happens if Bernie wins in Wisconsin and goes into New York with momentum and it gets a little closer than people think. And yeah, there are some very nervous superdelegates. I'm against the whole idea of superdelegates. Let the voters decide, not the insiders. But man, are they nervous that they may have to make a choice that a lot of their Democratic voters back home won't like.
Well, we had a graphic, I don't know if we can put it up, of Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, and she is soaring. Donald Trump is tanking, according to the Real Clear Politics average. You look at it right now, and I don't know if this has anything to do with Donald Trump's foreign policy stuff. But obviously, according to this, Hillary Clinton is the more electable of the candidates. And isn't this why they came up with the idea of superdelegates, to prevent a George McGovern disaster, something that everybody seemed to like but can't really go on and win the big thing? Wasn't this the idea behind superdelegates?
Well, that was the concept, that the people sometimes need to be corrected by the insiders and the establishment. But I'll tell you, one of the mysteries and fascinating things, if you go to Real Clear Politics, Bernie beats Trump by 17.5%, according to their average of polling, as of this morning at least. Hillary beats Trump by about 11 to 12%. So Bernie can make the argument, and he's been saying this, and I've actually written this just as a fact, that Bernie polls better against Republicans than Hillary, probably because he's much stronger with political independence, possibly because Bernie appeals to the kind of blue-collar workers that are suffering in the economy, the male blue-collar Reagan Democrat types who are not unsympathetic to Trump but prefer Bernie, but they don't like Hillary. So we've got a situation now where there is tremendous unrest all over America against both political establishments, and Hillary has to contend with that. She needs to be more of a change candidate and less of an establishment candidate. Bernie probably won't be nominated, but when you start doing as well as he is and has supporters that raised $43 million for him in February compared to $30 million for Hillary, that is telling something that we all should listen to, including Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, a lot of those people who are donating money to Bernie Sanders don't have jobs. So that's a little curious. And also, Hillary Clinton doing very well in the states with minorities, specifically black voters. Bernie Sanders, in a lot of these states that he has won, there are not a lot of black voters. And that's what's really buoying Hillary Clinton in some of these contests that she is winning. And I thought it was going to be a change after Michigan, kind of write Bernie Sanders off, but then he comes back, he wins Michigan. Not a lot of momentum. I'm waiting to see if there's any momentum built from this past weekend. Time will tell. Brent, as always, great to speak with you, and thanks for joining us today here on Newsmax Now.
Take care now. See you later.
One of the big stories this week was Donald Trump tweeting a side-by-side comparison of his wife and Ted Cruz's wife that wasn't flattering to Cruz's wife, Heidi. Thankfully, there's no side-by-side photos out there that could be unflattering to Donald Trump, because that would be the...
Okay, well, we got a special spring break edition of Headlines and Punchlines coming up for you right after the break.